that's the wrong one. Welcome to another episode of the Popcorn People Podcast. I am your host, Ricky Valero. On today's episode, Dom and I are going to share our thoughts on Danny Boyle and Garland's latest in the world of 28 years later. I am joined by my co-host, Mr. Dom Fisher. How are you, buddy?
What's popping, Colonels? Good as we can be. We're glad that we can provide a reprieve from all the craziness in the world because it just got crazier as of last night, and you know, it's we've been living as millennials. We've been living through way too much fucking history. I was hoping that when we got old, our history books would say, this generation was able to enjoy nothingness if they wanted to, and leisure, and that's just not the case because human beings are fucking despicable.
Yeah, it's a blast, I guess you could say. You know what I mean? But it's definitely, we're going through some times right now in the world, and like you said, hopefully we can bring a little bit of reprieve to that world, and hopefully, well, I say that, and I'm about to destroy a movie, but before we dive into the movie, right? Talk to me about your expectations heading to this. I think both of us were big fans of, the first two films. First one, second one, there's various opinions and who loves which one more. But to me, I think they're still both serviceable and watchable films. And what was your expectations kind of heading into this?
Yeah, so I until I'm ready to sit down and write a review, I try not to learn too much about like what is the future expectations of a movie or what they're trying to do with the franchise, what direction they're going. So when this was announced, you don't know what route they want to go, but you're like, man, I need this has to be the one that's more, knock down, drag out, infected zombie type flick, especially like I especially when you saw the poster, when you see like a pile of skulls, you're like, yo, this has got to be the one. This is gonna be, peak, zombie infected. You think I'm thinking like this is gonna be, a 120-minute fucking slaughter fest, and I think most people thought the same thing. That poster is potentially one of the most misleading posters I have ever seen, possibly ever. And I'm not saying that I'm completely mad at what they did, but I was just like, oh, that's that's not what I expected. Yeah, but yeah, I expected this to be more of a fast paced, high octane thing because we got the tempered like think piece essentially with the first movie. We had this kind of thing, and the second one kind of, while it still kind of feels like it's its own thing, we got like what humanity is doing, and this one went a lot deeper than I thought it would go.
Yeah, I mean, I was super excited. Probably one of my most anticipated movies of the year. You know what I mean? I'm a big fan of Alex Garland. I think he's one of our better writers of this generation. I mean, we saw that with Civil War. We saw that with Warfare. I think that he's got a interesting perspective on things. And, I wasn't really sure what to expect 28 years later. But the trailer, I think the other thing about this movie is the trailer is one of the most deceiving things that we've seen in a long time, too, because I even saw people comment on this, and obviously people didn't love my opinion on the film, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But the big thing for me was the trailer was such an interesting dynamic and such a kind of felt like there was going to be high stakes and lots of pressure. You know what I mean? And I just felt like we were along for the ride, and but yeah, you know what? Let's go ahead and dive into 28 years later. Dom, give us the breakdown.
Well, let's see. We have this is a long one too. It's been almost 3 decades since the rage virus escaped from a biological weapons laboratory. Still living in a ruthlessly enforced quarantine, some have found ways to exist amid the infected. One such group of survivors lives on a small island connected to the mainland by a single, heavily defended causeway. When one of them decides to venture into the dark heart of the mainland, he soon discovers a mutation that has spread to not only the infected but other survivors as well. Um, man, okay, look, this is my thing. Uh, every every zombie movie, every zombie TV show, every piece of zombie literature, there is a heavy focus on humanity, right? And I've always enjoyed that. It's kind of how will humanity survive? How will it overcome? How will it eventually thrive and then rebuild itself? Cool. I love that aspect, but we have got it so much. Like, right? The Walking Dead was probably the biggest zombie thing over the past decade, and that's what it gave us a lot of. People hated the slow episode, like the filler episodes, because it focused on humanity, it focused on maybe a person. And so when we get a movie, we kind of like, we get that that's going to be there. We want it a little bit, but then we want to see the action, right? And I think that, especially with these two, Boyle and Garland, I think that they're able to give us a more of a balance, and we just didn't get that balance. Like, and again, I still enjoyed the human aspect. I enjoyed the kind of the geopolitical kind of aspect of it. Of this has been going on for so long. You have these people stuck on an island, and the world knows they're there. Planes are flying over, but everybody like um I mean, you can think of anything topical, any country being attacked that doesn't deserve it, and go, "Oh, this is kind of the same thing." This is like, we know what's happening, and we care, as a world, care a lot at first, but then you kind of go about your day because you have to go to work, you have to raise your family, you can't sit there and focus on this whole thing, and then eventually it escapes the mind completely because you're so caught up in your day-to-day lives. So I get that part, but the the fact that we're kind of sold this, even in the beginning of the movie, getting sold this huge rite of passage thing that disappears so quickly. We don't get as much of the everyday life that we should have got of this island village that they've built with these flashes of old footage, and you're trying to figure, okay, is this a subliminal message telling us like how far back they've regressed and they're trying to go get back forward? It feels cultish to me, but it's not explored enough for me to fully be able to make a well dissected opinion. And then we get hints of the attacks, and they're few and far between. Is it because the infected are more um like becoming more civilized, maybe, and that's why the groups were selected? I don't know, because they didn't really go into it. We didn't see where they were. They just popped up out of the ground like weeds, and and then I don't want to spoil the craziest part to me, but the doctor sequence, which I thought was cool. This dude is like, it's almost like he's doing a nature documentary. He's out there studying and trying to remain as human as possible and uphold some kind of old customs. And but then, as this journey, kind of coming of age story is taking place, you know, you have this weird. We have our reveal, right, and then we have a addition to the pyramid, and it's such a quick and weird thing to me, and it just gets glazed over very quickly, and you know, the young boy is just supposed to kind of go about his day like nothing happened. Uh, and then we have massive meat just out here being tossed around all crazy for a whole movie. I mean, and then you have an ending that we'll probably get into after you talk about it for yourself, but um it just felt a lot of it felt out of the tone change is crazy. That's what I'll say. The tone change is crazy. Yeah, I just feel like they wanted to say so much that I think that they left out key elements that could have made this the horror movie of the year. Because I think as much as people say they loved it, I think it's because they wanted to so much. Because I enjoyed many aspects of it, but I can say that there was a lot of things that I was very disappointed by. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. I mean, the thing about it is so when I'm unpacking the film, right? The first act is actually pretty solid. I actually enjoy the first act. However, when you think about the rest of the film, the first act no longer fits anymore. And that's where my issue lies because it's like, well, if you enjoy the first act, why did you rate it so low? Well, it's because you can erase goodwill that you build in the first act because none of it makes any sense. You have a 5-10 minute opening that doesn't really fit into the picture until the end of the film. That to me, I understand there's people like, oh, well, we're building a new trilogy. Sure, okay, I get that. But let's worry about it. It's the same thing that I've always felt like Dune. Everybody in the world knows how much I hated Dune, the first movie. I fucking hated Dune because it's almost like they're like, we'll just wait for the second one. No, well, how about I get to actually enjoy the first one? You know what I mean? To me, there is so many plot holes in this movie. It's absolutely positively absurd for me to see the consistent talk about this movie being a masterpiece, one of the best horror movies. Oh my God, it made me feel things. It made me cry. And I'm not saying and discrediting people. You can say it made you feel things, it made you cry. There's a lot of a human element to the story. Absolutely. However, you cannot sit here and tell me that this script makes sense on a variety of different levels. Okay. We're talking about a father that is overly protective of his son in the wild. You watch him be overly protective. You watch him shove him in front of him while they're being chased across this river at the beginning of the movie. But then you're going to tell me he's not going to go find him when he just randomly goes missing? Come on, man. I just, and also, so plot holes, plot holes, plot holes, plot holes, plot holes. There is about 50 of them. Okay. Then on the flip side, can we talk about the sound, the dialogue? There was several sequences where like Aaron Taylor Johnson says things, and I'm like, what did he just say?
Yep.
Like the dialogue between, and there's a few sequences with Ray Fiennes where he says something. I'm like, what is you got? Can I get subtitles? Okay, and I understand maybe it's like the heavy British accent, maybe it's like whatever, but like make it coherent. Like what did you say? Like literally, there was a one scene where he talks to Spike, and I think it's like upstairs in the attic or whatever, and he leans over and says something to him, and I'm like, what? I'm sorry. What did you say? I genuinely like. How am I supposed to care about what is going on? But to me, you build a strong first act with the action ish that we were promised. Again, and I think you made the best point. And I didn't think about this. We've had so many peeled back the layers of zombie lands or infected. I'm sorry. Some people infected. We've seen so many of these unpacked in the past that again, we didn't need another origin. This isn't an origin story. This is 28 years after the initial attack, the initial infected. We already got an origin story. I know it's a new trilogy, but it's based off an original film 20 years ago. And it's just and you're right. And obviously it's the first weekend. We won't dive into like the spoiler aspect of it, but it's like 1 minute X, Y, and Z happens, and then the next minute, dead buried, boom, bang, boom. And I'm like, what are we doing here? It just,
no tears. It was just
it was a 5-minute scene. The whole purpose of Spike and his mother to go across this terrifying, unbelievable, undeniably hurtful place is to find a cure for her. That's the cure that you're okay with? You're pitching a bitch because your daddy done was making out with somebody else because your mama's sick, crying and whining and shit. But then this happens.
right.
And
Yeah,
don't even
and
get me started about how he goes across the waters where there's a literally 24-hour, 7-day a week watch happening throughout the entirety of the day. He crossed the path and then crossed back across with nobody seeing, without Captain Schlong dancing after him, nothing. And then on top of that, he had a baby in his hand. You tell me the baby didn't wake nobody up? What the fuck?
yeah, the baby that we were told can only survive a few days off just water. And we know that babies, when they're hungry, they're going to cry. And this baby would cry a lot. Now, that aspect, though, is probably for me, probably the most, the baby and how it comes to be is probably the most interesting part of the movie because I want to know, because
Right.
of the way that um the film is starting to unfold is like and potentially what I could possibly see in the sequel is like, does this kid, without giving spoilers, does this kid become bigger or matter more in a cultish type of uh society, become something bigger than what we think instead of just being a kid. And I would
Oh
have liked
yeah.
to, I would have liked to see like the whole town too. Like we know, okay, this is rite of passage when they're supposed to be like 13, 14 before they go out and get their first kill, which is essentially like what the it's kind of the first act alludes to. And why did we not see them, like the town, like we see that they prepare parties and stuff like that. Why don't we see them preparing for a hunt? We see that they have like stockpiled of weapons because they sometimes go out as a whole township to get whatever they need to, or
Supplies.
just
Like,
go out and
yeah.
practice. And because you would think if you're that tight knit of a community, you know that there's these super strong and fast infected that you be kind of practicing with each other like military style, because we have to protect each other. And it was just like, oh no, we all get, you go out by yourself, if you come back we get drunk and have a party, if you don't come back we get drunk and have a party, that
Right.
whatever.
Right, yeah, because you saw that as soon as they leave, you see the little fucking, funeral or the little tombstones for the people that didn't come back. And that's one thing. You're right, but my problem is I think we don't know where Bone Tomahawk, I guess it's called, is going to pick up, right? And the thing about that is I do think that there is an interesting element that maybe could have been the foundation of this story, where they do find a baby, and the baby is, they give birth, the infected give birth to the baby, right? We don't really know at what point this baby was conceived, right? Because that's another interesting dynamic of what we don't know. You know what I mean? How long has this pregnant lady been out there? Was she because if she, I'm pretty positive she wouldn't have been pregnant and then went over there, right? That doesn't make any
Right,
sense because we didn't
right,
see a lot of women getting active in the forging of going across the plan, because that's not part of their cult, per se. It's about the boys getting 12, 13, 14 and going across the land, getting that first kill and stuff like that. So where does that dynamic in? We don't get any introduction to the pregnant lady. And did she get impregnated by the infected? Does that make any sense? Which doesn't make any sense because we've never built upon anything like that. You know what I
right.
mean? But then also you're right. Like the the big bad Captain Schlong was so prevalent on trying to get the baby back, right? That was
Yeah.
what, when they were chasing, and again, we'll write in vague details, but towards the end, you're chasing the doctor and Spike, and all he really wanted was the baby.
Exactly.
So the baby has some, and I do like that idea. Think about that though. Think about it from a cool concept of a cult, of this baby is born out of this uncertainty, and it's almost built to this idea of a god. You know what I'm
Yep.
saying? Because again, maybe this baby can go across the land and have a high five and fucking coffee with, with Papa over here, and it can maybe intertwine the worlds into one type of thing. You know what I mean? But again, we're making up things to make it sound like there's some sort of hope in this world. But
Right.
but to me, it's like there's just what we were presented trailer, what we're presented pictures, photos, and what we were ultimately given. I just didn't find myself really, and the disappearance of Aaron Taylor Johnson for the whole entire second half of the
Hmm.
movie, the dumbest shit ever. He was by
Yeah.
far the best part of the first half of the movie. I could care less about Spike. No offense. I know a lot of people, quote unquote, resonate with this character or whatever. I didn't care for him. I didn't care for his performance really that much. The only performances I really cared about outside of Aaron St. Johnson, I thought Ray Fiennes was pretty cool as the doctor. I think there's a lot of loopholes in the doctor's backdrop. I think somebody needs to question his backstory of why he just decided to just off somebody. But and then I did think Jodie Comer, not given a lot, she did provide a lot.
Yeah. And I think and this is also pulling something possibly that's it's slightly there, but not completely there. Is that I think right after our screening, I told Chrissy, our rep, I said, you know, maybe because is they've been effective for so long, right? And eventually, like we know, viruses mutate, right? Nature is always going to find a way to right the ship, right? Mother Nature has a way of the whatever is going wrong, it's going to find some way to either make it evolve or wipe it out to start over. And potentially, I think that's what this baby is it's the next evolution, which is why it wasn't infected, because it righted itself. And we saw with not only the pregnant infected woman, but with King Kong Schlong, that they understand more than some of the others, right? They're not even, and now that they don't have a lot of people to go after, you see the ones on the ground eating worms, they're eating deer, they're whatever they can get their hands on. So does that go to the point that they've been infected so long that it's evolved to they're slowly getting back to a humanity, but the uninfected are not looking at them as people, right? And so you have like the same way that a lot of Western society looks at third world countries. They're not people. They are not like us. They look at what they're eating, right? So I don't know if they did any of that intentionally, or that's just me like over analyzing everything like I always do. But there's little things that can be there.
But I think that's
And
the thing though, like you like to overanalyze, like we I won't say you, we like to overanalyze things, especially when they're not presented to us.
yeah, yeah,
You know what I mean? You want to, again, because again, and I think that we dive a little bit deeper into worlds that we want it to like.
yeah, yeah,
You know what I mean? Because the more I unpack about this movie, the more I thought about, honestly, like there's nothing more than I wanted than Aaron Taylor Johnson to be Jimmy.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And now his name is Jamie, and apparently everybody in the Power Rangers at the end of the movie is all called Jimmy or James of some sort, too. I don't know if you know this,
I
but
didn't know. Yeah, I didn't
yeah,
realize
so it's
that.
it's like on the IMDb page or whatever, or the they're all called Jimmy of some sort. You know what I mean? Like,
Like George Foreman and his kids.
right, exactly. Oh, it's Bone Temple, not Tomahawk. Whatever, same thing. Um,
But yeah, it's like there's Jimmy, and there's Jimmy Jones. There's Jimmy Crystal. Yeah, so there's a bunch of Jimmys. Also came up with the theory of, since Aaron Taylor Johnson's name is Jamie, that he was maybe one of the original parts of the Jimmys and broke away from the Jimmys. Again, I'm just
Mm,
making shit up here
right.
as I can, because we have, it's just we have all of these people that don't make any fucking sense.
Yeah,
And somewhere, yeah.
even with the very the final sequence of the film, I had to go, okay, this tone change, it's a change in tone, it's a change in color palette, it's a change in like complete dialogue, because you can tell it's a little more like, um it feels like Robert Rodriguez, right? Like,
It felt like Smoking Aces almost too. Like
yes, I was
Smoking
like,
Aces, yeah.
I have to assume that the reason you did this is because we know that Nia DaCosta is doing the next film, and there's a complete tonal change, and this is when we get the action that we want. But again, it's speculation because it just felt so out of place, and you go,
But if that's the action we get, like that's the action we're gonna get.
yeah,
You know what I
yeah,
mean?
right,
Because to me, I mean, you get the color palette. The colors can't come from the beginning of the movie, right? You put two and two together. The colors come from the Teletubbies.
yeah,
I'm assuming that's why they're the colors the way they are, because he has that ingrained in his head for the rest of his life. Yeah, cool. You finally coincided something from the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie. Um, but the thing about it is like, if that's the level of insanity we're going to, there's almost elements of this movie that I was like, this was like, if you would have told me Marlon Wayans and the Wayans brothers directed this was like a parody movie, I would have believed you. You know what I mean? Like Captain Schlong running around, the story didn't make any sense. We're laughing at stupid moments. You know what I mean? You could have even made a mockery of the lady fucking having the baby on the bus, train, whatever it was. But like, there's just a level of almost, are we going to go to a level of absurdity in the second one? Like
yeah,
I'm like,
yeah. That's what it feels like.
and it's like, why? And because to me, again, like even if at the end of the movie you introduce the Jimmys, right? I'm like, all right, cool, introduce them. But then how you do it and all this weird kung fu shit, like flips that make no sense at all, that are literally impossible.
Off
You're
like a
taking out
10-foot wall.
the reality. You're taking, this is supposed to be, again, this is where it makes me mad, where people talk about this being a masterpiece and all that stuff. You take the reality, the humanity of the film, right? Even if you peel back the layers, there's a level of humanity within the film that you've mentioned. Where is that in the human aspect of things?
Right.
Where is that in the reality of things? Like, that's to me is like, and then of course, people have already been like, oh my God, like Nia DaCosta, she's directing this. She did, was it the Marvels? I think it was, right? The Marvels.
And she
She,
did a short on The Last Candyman.
Right, but I think everybody hated the Marvels just because,
Yeah.
obviously. But like, in my opinion, you're almost setting her up for failure in some
Yeah.
levels of like the absurdity of what you're bringing to the table. Because again, I understand that people love this film, and as of the one thing I've been keeping an eye on, it's got a B cinema score. But the one thing I don't know, it's 89% on Rotten Tomatoes for critics. But we're down to 65% on Rotten Tomatoes for audiences. It's going down. You know what I mean? 65% is
Yeah.
not great, y'all. But I don't know. Any parting thoughts on 28 years later, Dom?
Um, there is when you're speaking of like plot holes, there's one thing I almost forgot. The Tower of Skulls, right? Spike goes over and he's curious and he touches it. Some skulls fall down. He's like, oh, it's kind of fragile a little bit. Then he climbs this bitch and nothing moves. And then I got to thinking, the doctor climbs this too, and he's a grown ass man. Skulls don't weigh that damn much. How is it holding I don't know, man. I was just like, and that was one thing that took me out as I'm watching. I was like, didn't some skulls just fall out? He's climbing up this whole thing, and the fact that Spike was terrified when he first goes out there, and then without even a thought goes right back out there, and all of a sudden he's when we get to a certain the after past the doctor scenes and shit, he's like roasting or cooking fish over a campfire, and he's not really as terrified. I was like, I mean, I get at some point as a young boy, certain aspects of fear disappear, but that in the same like 2 days, basically, like what are we doing? Like I don't know, man.
I'm telling
I
you, the more I thought about this movie, the more I fucking hated it.
and it is, and that, and I don't know if that's it's a good thing or bad thing, because it is one of those movies where as soon as I walked out, I was like, there's a lot to unpack, and I didn't have the full complete thought of like, did I enjoy this or did I not? It had me on the fence, which is why I had to focus more on the humanity aspect, because a lot of the other stuff I was like, certain things went wrong. But yeah, if you love it, cool. You know what I mean? But like, it's okay that, I think back to that the second or third episode of the studio, right? The note. They love the movie, right? They're 2 hours in, fucking, this is a masterpiece. Then they get to the last 45 minutes that they didn't expect to be there, and they're like, the movie's dog shit. Because just the last 45 minutes, you had 2 hours of masterpiece, 45 minutes of dog water, and not ruin the entire movie. And that is okay. You can say, I like this movie to a point, and that's just what it is. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't really pay attention to the cinema scores, but from what I understand, a B is not that great, especially for one that people are calling a masterpiece. So I don't know, man. This one, the fans, they may be right. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it's like if you're calling this a masterpiece or even giving it 4.5 stars, whatever, again, I'm not, rate a film however you want to, but I just get in the part of like, you cannot overlook the glaring plot holes in this entire movie. There's too many of them. But all right, Dom, have you watched anything else this week? I don't really feel like I've watched anything else.
Let me see. I feel like I didn't either. I had some things I was working on.
No,
No.
I didn't really watch anything else this week.
Besides me trying to catch up on like the studio, I had watched a couple episodes last night, and I feel like I watched something. Oh, well, I mean, I ended up rewatching 28 Days Later. And look, I really enjoy the movie. However, if you want to get people into the zombie world, I feel like that's not the movie to do it. Honestly, like as much as people cover that movie, I feel like that's not the one to do it to. I was just like,
World War Z is a banger.
Yeah. Or even if you just want to go old school and go Night of the Living Dead, to kind of give you like, that's the pinnacle of like, I don't know. That movie is one of my favorites. It's got the balance of we're seeing humanity play out within this house with what, 5 people, and then it dwindles down, and then the constant barrage of zombies trying to get inside the house, and then the fucked up ending that happens. I feel like the simplicity sometimes is key in a story that has so much going on, and maybe they were trying to do too much with this film.
Yeah, I agree. And anybody that rated that movie higher than Sinners should be abolished.
Yeah.
We're talking about a real good movie. All right. Well, then that's it for this week's episode. This week, we do have what F1 comes out in. No, F1 does not come out. Yes, it does. F1 does come out. F1 comes out in theaters. If you are a Regal or AMC stub person, Jurassic World or Jurassic something begins rebirth, whatever it's called, it's going to be the mystery movie of the week tomorrow. If you're listening to this beyond Monday, it's already in the past. But yeah, F1 comes out this week. I can't wait to dive into that a little bit. We'll probably talk about that next week. But yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in. And like I said, we'll be back next week to break down some more movies.
Peace.